Hey everyone. Ever feel like you're kind of swimming upstream? Like
Hmm.
society just wants everyone to be the loudest person in the room.
Yeah,
Today we're diving deep into Susan Cain's.
quiet.
Oh, great book.
To figure out why maybe, just maybe, enjoying quieter waters is actually a superpower.
Interesting.
We'll unpack some seriously insightful stuff about, introversion and how to really make it work for you.
It's funny. It's like we've all bought into this extrovert ideal
Oh, yeah?
as the only way to succeed.
That extrovert ideal, what does that even mean?
Well, Cain argues that somewhere back in the early 1900s,
Okay.
America kind of shifted from valuing character to being obsessed with personality.
Hmm.
It was like all of a sudden, to be happy and successful,
Yeah.
you had to be bold and outgoing. Like, that was it.
That reminds me of those old ads,
Yeah,
The ones that try to make you feel insecure so you'll buy their product.
right.
It's all about appearances and fitting in.
Exactly. Even advertising changed.
Mm.
Instead of talking about what a product does,
They started selling you an image, like
Mhm.
how this thing will make you seem more confident, more appealing. That's how personality-driven campaigns were born.
wow, that's really interesting. So where does introversion fit in all this?
Hmm.
Is it just like the opposite of being an extrovert?
Well, not quite. It's easy to mix up introversion with shyness, but
Right.
they're actually pretty different.
Right.
Shyness is all about being afraid of what people think.
Yeah,
Introversion, that's just about preferring less stimulating environments.
I see.
Think of it this way. Introverts recharge best in quieter settings.
Hmm.
Extroverts, they need all that external buzz to thrive.
Okay, I get it. But it still feels like in a world that values, outward confidence,
Yeah,
extroverts just have the upper hand.
true. It can feel that way.
Yeah.
Kane actually uses a really powerful analogy. She says introverts are like women in a man's world.
Wow.
They're often overlooked for something that's just a natural part of who they are.
That's a striking image. So how can introverts,
Yeah.
navigate this extrovert ideal and actually use their introversion to their advantage?
Well, first we got to understand what strengths introverts bring to the table.
Okay.
One of the big things Kane talks about in Quiet is the connection between introversion and creativity.
Ooh, this is where it gets interesting for me.
Yeah.
I've always felt like my best thinking happens when I'm alone,
Mm-hmm.
away from all the distraction.
You're not the only one. Kane highlights a bunch of research showing that introverts really shine in areas that require deep focus and independent thought.
Okay.
She talks about this study with computer programmers. They were in these coding war games.
Coding war games. Interesting.
Yeah, and the introverts consistently did better than their extroverted colleagues.
Really. Why do you think that is? What gives introverts that edge?
It probably comes down to their ability to concentrate and avoid getting swept up in groupthink, which is another fascinating thing Kane brings up.
Groupthink. What's that all about?
It's this tendency to just go along with the group's opinion, even when you know deep down it might be wrong.
Oh, interesting.
Kane discusses the Solomon Asch conformity experiment, the famous one,
Right.
where people were pressured into giving the wrong answers,
Wow.
even though they knew the right ones.
Isn't that kind of scary?
Yeah.
Like we could be swayed by the group without realizing it?
Totally. It's a powerful force.
Wow.
Kane even brings up fMRI studies that show how going along with the group can actually change how our brains see information.
Really?
Our brains are wired to try to fit in.
Wow.
There's even something called the pain of independence, that's
Yeah.
about going against the grain. It triggers our amygdala, the fear center.
So speaking up against the group, that takes real courage,
Absolutely.
especially for introverts who maybe already feel a bit different.
For sure. And that brings us to a really important point. Instead of trying to fit into this extroverted mold,
Yeah,
Kane says introverts should focus on what they're naturally good at.
makes sense.
She talks about this idea of free trade agreements.
Free trade agreements. What does that even mean?
It means being smart about when to act more extroverted to get something done, but without ignoring that need to recharge in your own way.
So it's like being adaptable without losing yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this could work. But what about these restorative niches?
Right.
Sounds like a fancy way of saying hide away.
No, not at all. It's just about knowing what really energizes you.
Okay.
For some, it might be a walk in nature. For others, it's curling up with a good book.
Right.
Kane tells this great story about Professor Brian Little. He's a really engaging lecturer,
Uh-huh.
but a self-proclaimed introvert.
Interesting.
During conferences, he'd always schedule breaks to just walk by the river, just to recharge before his next lecture.
It's
He
interesting.
knew he needed those restorative moments,
I get that.
even in a really social setting.
I can totally relate to that. Sometimes you just got to step away from the noise
Yeah.
and reconnect with yourself.
Exactly. And this is especially important when we think about raising and educating introverted kids.
Okay, so how do we apply all this to how we interact with and, nurture introverted children?
That's a huge question, and it's often overlooked.
Right?
Kane talks about how dangerous it can be to just label these kids as shy
Yeah.
or to constantly push them to be more outgoing. It can really hurt their self-esteem.
That makes sense.
Kids need to feel accepted for who they are.
Yeah. So how can we help these kids thrive,
Right.
especially in a world that seems to favor extroverts?
Kane suggests creating restorative niches at home.
Okay.
Safe spaces where they can recharge without pressure to always be on,
It's like a quiet corner or something.
Exactly.
Something like
That makes sense. It's also crucial to encourage them to do things that genuinely energize them,
Right.
even if those things aren't seen as social.
Yeah, so instead of pushing team sports, maybe they'd be happier in an art class.
Exactly. It's about recognizing their individual needs and helping them find their own way to shine.
That's really important.
Kane tells this heartbreaking story about a kid named Ethan.
Oh.
He was labeled as having psychological problems just
Right.
because he was introverted.
That's so sad.
It just shows how important it is to recognize and respect introverted traits.
Yeah. So how can we support these kids in those social situations that can be, overwhelming?
Kane's point is it's not about forcing them to become extroverts.
Right.
It's about helping them find their own ways to contribute in groups,
Yeah.
even if it's not the traditional leader role.
So helping them find their voice, even if it's a quieter one.
Exactly. It's about valuing their unique perspective
I see.
and encouraging them to share it in a way that feels comfortable for them.
This is all so insightful.
Yeah.
It's making me rethink a lot of my own assumptions about introversion
Good.
and how I can better support the introverts in my life.
That's great to hear. Speaking of rethinking assumptions,
Yeah.
Kane also challenges this big belief that extroverts just automatically make better leaders.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
You're saying introverts can be good leaders too.
It's
It seems, I don't know, counterintuitive.
It might seem that way at first, but Kane has some compelling research that suggests otherwise.
Okay.
She points to super successful leaders like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates.
Wow.
They're known for their quiet confidence, strategic thinking. Guess what? They're introverts.
Wow, that's amazing.
Uh,
It makes you wonder how many potential leaders we're overlooking
right.
just because they don't fit that, stereotypical leader mold.
You're absolutely right. And it's not just anecdotes.
Okay.
Kane talks about research by Adam Grant. He found that introverted leaders often excel when managing proactive employees.
Huh. Interesting.
They create environments where those employees can really flourish and bring their best ideas to the table.
So maybe they're less focused on being the center of attention and more on creating the right conditions for others to succeed.
Exactly. Kane highlights the concept of soft power,
Mm-hmm.
which is all about influencing others through quiet determination, empathy, and a thoughtful approach.
Okay.
Think about leaders like Gandhi.
Right.
He used his introverted nature to lead this powerful movement for change.
That's such a powerful example.
Yeah.
It really challenges our ideas about what leadership looks like.
It does.
So if introverts can be effective leaders, what other strengths do they bring?
Well, Kane also digs into the work of Dr. Elaine Aron.
Okay.
She researches sensitivity and its connection to introversion.
Sensitivity. I mean, isn't that often seen as a negative?
Yeah.
Especially in a world that values toughness.
It's the common perception, but Aron's work is groundbreaking.
Okay.
It challenges that view. She sees sensitivity as a strength. Highly sensitive people who are often introverts tend to be deeply empathic, conscientious, and responsive to beauty.
That's beautiful. It's like they experience the world on a deeper level.
Yeah.
Both the good and the bad.
You got it. While this sensitivity can sometimes lead to feeling overwhelmed,
Right.
it's also a source of incredible insight and creativity.
I see.
Think about artists, writers, musicians. Many of them are highly sensitive and use that to create works of art that really move us.
Wow, this is really making me rethink everything I thought I knew about introversion.
Good.
It's not about being shy or withdrawn. It's about experiencing and interacting with the world differently.
Yeah.
And that can be incredibly valuable.
Exactly. And speaking of a different way of experiencing the world,
Yeah.
did you know that introversion might actually have biological roots?
Really?
Kane explores the research of Dr. Jerome Kagan.
Okay.
He studied something called high reactivity in infants.
High reactivity. What's that?
Kagan found that some babies are just born with a more sensitive nervous system.
Huh.
They react more strongly to things like noise, light, new faces.
Mm.
You know what? These high reactive infants often grow up to be introverted adults.
So it's not just a preference, it's actually hardwired.
It is. Their brains are wired for a different level of stimulation. And this sensitivity isn't just about social stuff.
Oh.
High reactive people are often more sensitive to sensory input in general.
Right, that makes sense.
This helps explain why they might feel overwhelmed in loud or crowded places.
I can definitely relate to that.
And remember, it's not about being antisocial.
Yeah.
It's about having a different threshold for sensory input.
I see.
What's really interesting is that this sensitivity can actually be a good thing.
Okay.
Kagan's research also found that high reactive children, if they're raised in supportive environments,
Right.
often become super empathetic and conscientious.
That's great. So their sensitivity actually makes them more attuned to others.
Exactly. And that empathy can be a really powerful force in the world.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Kane also looks at the neuroscience of it all, examining how introvert and extrovert brains actually respond differently to stimuli.
So there are actual differences in brain activity.
There are. She talks about how introverts tend to have a more easily triggered amygdala.
Right.
That's the part of the brain that handles emotions like fear and anxiety.
So that explains why introverts might be more cautious in new situations.
Yeah.
Their brains are literally processing things differently.
You got it. It's not just a personality quirk, it's biology.
Wow.
This can be really validating for introverts who felt pressured to be more outgoing or less sensitive.
Yeah.
It's like finally having proof for why you feel the way you do.
Exactly.
This knowledge can help you make choices that honor your natural temperament.
I like that.
Understanding your sensitivity can help you create environments that work for you. Maybe you choose a quieter workspace.
Right.
Or set boundaries in your social life.
Yeah.
It's all about understanding your needs and honoring them.
That's a great point.
Mm.
So it's not about changing who you are. It's about creating a life that fits with your authentic self.
Exactly. Kane also looks at this thing called reward sensitivity.
Okay.
It sheds light on why introverts and extroverts are motivated by different things.
Interesting.
Extroverts are often driven by external rewards like status, money, recognition.
Yeah.
Their brains are wired to chase those things, which makes them more assertive and outgoing.
So you're saying introverts aren't as motivated by those things.
That's right. They tend to find intrinsic rewards more fulfilling.
Okay.
Things like personal growth, meaningful work, deep connections with others.
I see.
It's not that introverts aren't ambitious. Their ambition is just directed differently.
Right. It's a different kind of drive.
Yeah,
One that's fueled by internal satisfaction, not external validation.
precisely. This difference in reward sensitivity can also explain why introverts might be more cautious
Yeah,
or less impulsive than extroverts.
that makes sense.
Extroverts might be more okay with risks because their brains are focused on the potential rewards,
Right.
while introverts are more likely to weigh the downsides before jumping in. So introverts can bring balance and caution to a world that often glorifies boldness and impulsivity.
I see.
They can help us pause, reflect,
Right.
and think about the long-term consequences before rushing into action.
That's a really valuable perspective. It sounds like introverts and extroverts can actually complement each other,
Totally.
each bringing their own strengths.
Absolutely. And that leads us to another interesting part of Kane's book.
Okay.
She talks about how our modern work environments, with all the open plan offices and constant collaboration,
Right.
often clash with what introverts need.
It's funny,
Yeah.
we created these open plan offices thinking they'd boost collaboration and creativity, but maybe they're not so ideal for everyone.
Exactly. As Kane points out, these spaces can be super distracting and overwhelming for introverts.
Right.
They do better in quieter, more focused settings.
Makes sense.
It's like we designed these spaces for extroverts without even considering the needs of a huge chunk of the workforce.
So we're unintentionally setting people up for discomfort,
Yeah.
maybe even lower productivity.
Exactly. Kane cites studies showing open plan offices can actually decrease productivity
Wow.
and increase stress for a lot of employees.
It's interesting.
And it's not just the physical space.
Right.
It's the culture of constant meetings and brainstorming
Yeah.
that can be draining for introverts who need time for solo reflection.
It sounds like we're prioritizing a certain way of working over individual needs.
That's right. Kane shares this funny story about a business consultant.
Oh.
He was describing the modern workplace as a world where you can't just sit down and tell someone what you think. You got to make a whole presentation with pros and cons and a takeaway box.
Wow. So even simple communication becomes this big performance.
Exactly.
I can see how that would be exhausting for introverts.
Yeah.
Who prefer those more direct, thoughtful interactions.
Exactly. And while that might work for some people, it can be really draining and inauthentic for introverts.
Right.
They thrive on deeper, more meaningful conversations.
So what's the solution? Do we all need private offices again?
Well, that's not always practical, or even what people want.
Sure.
I think Kane's point is that we need more balance spaces for both collaboration and solitude.
Right.
Recognizing that people have different needs when it comes to how and where they work.
So it's about creating a more inclusive workplace that caters to a variety of needs and styles.
Yes. We need to value both the extrovert's ability to brainstorm and the introvert's ability to focus and think deeply.
Right. They both bring something to the table.
Absolutely. And this applies to our education system, too.
Oh, yeah.
Kane points out how challenging it can be for introverted kids.
I'm really passionate about this. I think we often do a disservice to these kids.
I agree.
By forcing them into a system that prioritizes group activities and constant interaction. It's like we're telling them there's something wrong with their natural way of being.
Exactly. And that can have a lasting impact on their self-esteem and their sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Kane tells a story about a girl named Isabel who loved spending time alone in her room after school. Her mom was worried at first.
Yeah, understandable.
But Isabel explained that she just needed to recharge after being around people all day.
That's so important, to listen to kids.
Yes.
And respect their individual needs.
Absolutely.
We shouldn't assume there's something wrong.
Right.
Just because a child needs more downtime.
Totally.
Or enjoys being alone.
We need learning environments that support different learning styles and temperaments.
I agree.
Kane argues that we should be celebrating those quiet, thoughtful kids.
Yes.
Not trying to force them into an extroverted mold.
Right.
We should be teaching them how to use their strengths.
I love that. Nurturing their unique talents.
Yes.
And helping them find their own path to success.
Exactly. And this brings us to one of the most important messages in Quiet.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with being an introvert.
I like that.
It's not a weakness, it's a temperament with its own strengths and challenges.
I agree.
The more we understand and embrace introversion, the better we can create a world that truly works for everyone.
Couldn't agree more. We've talked a lot about the challenges introverts face. But there's another side to this, right? What about the advantages of being an introvert?
That's a great point, and it's something Kane explores so well.
Yeah.
There are some incredible advantages to being an introvert in our chaotic world.
Tell me more.
I love how she reframes those qualities that are often seen as negative, like sensitivity and a preference for solitude, and shows how they can actually be superpowers.
Okay, how can those so-called negative traits be advantages?
Well, she talks about how an introvert's sensitivity can make them super perceptive and attuned to the needs of others.
Oh, interesting.
They're more likely to notice subtle cues or pick up on unspoken emotions.
So they're not just tuned into their own world.
No.
They're also very aware of the world around them.
Exactly. And this can make them really effective communicators and leaders.
Oh, interesting.
They might not dominate the conversation,
Right.
but they're often the ones who are truly listening and understanding.
It's like they're processing information on a deeper level.
Yeah.
Taking in not just the words, but the emotions, the unspoken messages.
You're getting it. Kane also talks about how that preference for solitude can be a source of creativity and innovation.
Okay.
They might need more time to process and think things through.
Right.
But this allows them to come up with ideas that others might miss.
It's like giving their minds the space to wander and explore.
Precisely. And because they're less driven by external validation, they might be more willing to challenge the status quo.
So they can push us to think differently.
Yeah.
See the world from a new perspective.
Exactly. They bring balance to a world that's obsessed with speed and constant stimulation. They remind us to slow down, reflect, and connect with what truly matters.
I love that. Being an introvert isn't just about what you don't do. It's about what you uniquely bring to the table.
Exactly. And Kane explores this concept of restorative niches.
Right, we touched on that earlier.
Yeah, these are spaces or activities that let introverts recharge and connect with themselves.
So what kind of things are we talking about?
It could be anything from being in nature to reading a book to just having quiet time alone.
Yeah.
The key is that it allows them to step away from the outside world
Right.
and reconnect with their inner world.
Like giving yourself permission to unplug and recharge.
You got it. And these niches are crucial for introverts
Okay.
to maintain their energy and well-being.
Makes sense.
It's like refueling your internal battery so you can be your best self.
That's important for everyone, really.
It is.
Not just introverts.
We all need those moments of quiet. Kane also talks about free trade agreements.
Right, that idea of consciously choosing when to act more extroverted.
Exactly. It's a strategy for introverts to navigate the world authentically.
I see.
They can tap into their extroverted side when they need to, but they also know to create those restorative niches to come back to their center.
I love that idea of conscious choice and self-awareness.
It's about being intentional with your energy, knowing when to push and when to pull back.
That's a great takeaway.
Yeah.
And this isn't just for introverts.
No.
It's for everyone.
We don't all have to fit into the same mold.
Right.
We can honor our individual needs and preferences
I agree.
and still achieve our goals and contribute to the world.
This is such a refreshing perspective.
Yeah.
It's about embracing our unique strengths
Yes.
and finding a way to express them authentically.
I love how Kane encourages introverts to embrace their strengths and use them to make a positive impact.
It's so inspiring to hear about introverts who found their voice and made a difference on their own terms.
It gives me hope that we can create a world that values those quieter strengths.
Exactly. And I think this is one of the most important messages in Quiet.
Yeah.
It's a call to action for introverts to step up and share their gifts, use their quiet strengths, their thoughtful insights, their deep empathy to make a real difference.
We need all kinds of voices, all kinds of perspectives to create a more balanced world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we need a world that values the full spectrum of human experience.
You know, reading Quiet made me think about the power of language.
Yeah.
How the words we use to describe ourselves and others can really shape our perceptions.
You're so right. We use words like shy or quiet as if they're bad things.
Yeah, it's like we've unconsciously judged those words.
But as Kane points out, we need to see these words differently.
I agree.
Shyness can be sensitivity and thoughtfulness.
Right.
Quietness can be strength and inner focus. Those qualities are just as valuable as their extroverted counterparts. It's about recognizing that there's no one right way to be.
Absolutely.
We all have a mix of introverted and extroverted tendencies.
Yeah.
And that's what makes us who we are.
That's the beauty of human diversity.
Yeah.
We're all unique, and it's that uniqueness that makes life so rich and interesting.
I love that.
Kane encourages us to embrace our whole personalities, to honor both our need for connection and our need for solitude.
Right.
And to find a balance that works for us.
That's a really important message. It's about self-acceptance,
Yes.
honoring our needs and preferences,
Exactly.
and recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to life.
Absolutely. And one thing I appreciate about Quiet is that it's not just about introversion. It's also about understanding and valuing human differences in general.
It's about creating a world where everyone feels comfortable being themselves,
Yeah.
where we celebrate our differences instead of trying to fit in.
You got it. And it's about recognizing that we can learn from each other's strengths, no matter our personality types or backgrounds.
That's so true. Kane's message is especially important today.
Yeah.
When we're bombarded with messages telling us to be more outgoing and confident,
It can be overwhelming,
it's like we're constantly told we're not good enough.
but Quiet reminds us that there's another way.
Right.
It's okay to be quiet, reflective, sensitive.
And those qualities are essential.
Yes,
We need those quieter voices to balance out all the noise.
absolutely. Kane's book is a powerful testament to the power of introversion.
I agree.
It's a call to action for all of us to create a world that celebrates the full spectrum of human experience.
This has been such an insightful conversation.
Yeah,
I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of Quiet.
I know, right? There's so much more to explore.
Absolutely.
I encourage everyone listening to pick up the book and dive in.
It's a great book.
Because understanding introversion isn't just about understanding a personality type.
Yeah.
It's about understanding something fundamental about human nature.
It's about recognizing the value of quiet strength,
Yes.
thoughtful reflection, and the power of deep connection.
And it's about creating a world that celebrates that full spectrum of human experience.
Absolutely.
A world where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued for who they truly are.
That's a beautiful vision.
It is.
And I think it's a vision worth striving for. But we still have more to unpack from Quiet.
We do.
And I'm excited to keep exploring.
Me too. Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into Quiet.
Right.
We'll go even deeper into Kane's work.
Sounds good.
We'll explore how introversion can be a powerful asset in unexpected fields like sales and leadership.
Interesting.
And uncover even more strategies for creating a world that honors and celebrates the quiet strengths of introverts.
I'm looking forward to it. See you next time.
See you then. Welcome back. It's interesting, right? We always associate fields like sales and leadership with being extroverted.
It's true. You picture that stereotypical, slick salesperson who's always on.
Right, but Kane really flips that idea on its head.
I bet she does. So what does she say?
She introduces us to this guy, John Burkhoff.
Okay.
He's a super successful salesperson, but he's known for being quiet and introspective. He focuses on really listening to his clients, understanding their needs.
I see.
That's what builds trust, those real connections.
So it's not about the hard sell, it's about building relationships.
Exactly.
I bet that's really effective.
It is. Kane points out that a lot of the top salespeople she's met actually have many introverted qualities.
Interesting.
They're the ones who listen more than they talk, who build relationships based on trust.
Right.
And they're not afraid to have those deep, meaningful conversations.
You know, it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
People don't always want the hard sell.
No.
They want to feel heard and understood.
Right.
Maybe that natural inclination to listen is what makes introverts so good at connecting with clients.
Absolutely. It reminds us that there's no one right way to be successful.
True. It's about finding your own approach.
Thanks.
So if introverts can thrive in sales, what about leadership?
Good question.
We talked about the extrovert ideal.
Right.
And how it affects our view of what a leader should be.
Yeah.
Does Kane address this, introverts and leadership?
She does. She really challenges that assumption that extroverts automatically make better leaders.
Okay.
In fact, she argues that introverted leaders, with their quiet confidence, their ability to listen and observe, and their focus on substance over style, can be incredibly effective.
Interesting.
They lead by example, inspiring trust and respect through what they do, not just what they say.
That's fascinating.
It really challenges that image we have of the charismatic, outspoken leader.
Yeah.
The one always commanding the room.
Are there any real-world examples of this kind of introverted leadership?
Oh, tons. Kane mentions people like Warren Buffett, known for his thoughtful, deliberate approach to investing.
Yeah.
And Bill Gates, who's famous for his intellectual curiosity and thinking outside the box.
Right.
These leaders might not be the ones seeking the spotlight. But they earn respect through their actions, their insights, their commitment to their vision.
It's really inspiring to see those examples.
It is.
Introverts achieving success in leadership roles, often by going against those conventional expectations.
Exactly. And Kane also talks about this idea of soft power.
Okay.
It's often associated with introverted leaders, especially in Asian cultures.
Interesting.
These leaders might not be the most charismatic or loudest, but they wield influence through quiet persistence.
Okay.
A deep understanding of people and their ability to build consensus.
I see. Like, who comes to mind when you think of that?
Someone like Nelson Mandela.
Wow.
He used his time in prison to reflect, learn, connect with others on a deeper level.
Powerful story.
It is.
It shows that true leadership isn't about dominating.
No.
It's about inspiring and empowering others to reach their potential.
Exactly.
And sometimes that takes a quieter, more introspective approach.
You got it. It's a reminder that leadership isn't always about being the loudest voice.
Right.
Sometimes it's about listening, observing, understanding,
Yeah.
and having the courage to stand up for what you believe in, even when it means going against the grain.
Wow. This is really shifting my whole perspective on leadership.
Good.
So, if introverts have these leadership qualities, what's Kane's advice for those who might be hesitant to step into those roles?
She encourages them to embrace their strengths and trust their instincts.
Makes sense.
Don't be afraid to share your vision, even if it's in a quieter way.
Yeah.
Your quiet strength can be really powerful.
I like that. It's about recognizing that leadership can take many forms.
Right.
And that introverted qualities can actually be assets.
Absolutely.
So Where do we go from here? What are the key takeaways we can apply to our own lives, whether we're introverts or not?
I think one of the most powerful messages in quiet is that we need to challenge our own biases and assumptions about what it means to be successful, to be a good leader, even to be a well-adjusted person.
It's true. We're so quick to label and categorize.
We are.
And those labels can be limiting.
They can.
Especially when they're based on outdated stereotypes.
Exactly. And this applies to how we raise and educate kids, too.
Oh, for sure.
We need to be aware of the messages we're sending and create environments that celebrate all types of personalities.
I'm thinking about Ethan again.
Yeah.
That little boy who was mislabeled because he was introverted.
It's heartbreaking to think how many kids are being misunderstood.
Yeah.
Maybe even misdiagnosed. Because we don't fully embrace the full spectrum of human temperament.
It is a sobering thought.
But Kane's work offers hope.
Okay.
By highlighting the power of introversion.
Yeah.
She's helping us move towards a more inclusive and accepting world.
Right, a world where everyone can feel seen and valued for who they are.
Exactly. And it's not just about race or gender. It's about personality, temperament, the unique ways we experience and interact with the world.
That's a great point, that diversity is a strength.
Absolutely.
We need all types of people, all types of minds.
We do.
To create a truly vibrant society.
So how do we put this understanding into practice?
Right, that's the big question.
What can we do as individuals and as a society to create a more introverted, friendly world? Kane says we need to start by challenging our own biases. Questioning our assumptions about what makes a good leader, a successful employee, even a happy child.
We need to be more mindful of the environments we create.
Yes.
At home, at work.
Exactly.
Designing spaces for both collaboration and solitude. Recognizing that people have different needs.
Absolutely. And we need to encourage kids to develop their strengths, even if they don't fit the extroverted mold.
We need to celebrate the quiet thinkers, the sensitive souls.
Yes.
The ones who might not be the loudest,
right,
but whose contributions are just as important.
I love that. It's about shifting our perspective.
Yeah.
Recognizing that quiet strength can be just as powerful.
Absolutely.
Maybe even more so than all that outward charisma.
This has been so eye-opening. I'm seeing the world differently now.
Good.
Appreciating those quieter strengths that we often miss.
Me too. And we've got more to talk about.
Okay.
Stay tuned for part 3 of our deep dive into quiet.
Sound good.
We'll go even deeper into the power of introversion, exploring how it can help us deal with the challenges of our modern world and create a more balanced and harmonious society.
Looking forward to it. You know, it's amazing how much of our conversation about quiet has been about challenging these, ingrained assumptions about introversion.
It really does, doesn't it?
It's like our culture just automatically prizes those extroverted traits. Sometimes without even realizing it.
Yeah, it's like we've got this unconscious bias.
Right.
Equating quietness with weakness and being loud with strength.
But Kane just blows that myth apart.
She does.
Showing how introversion can be this powerful force.
With its focus on reflection.
Right. And deeper connection.
And it's not just about individual strength, right?
Right.
Kane also talks about how introversion can benefit society as a whole.
That's interesting. How so?
Well, she says we need introverts with their unique perspectives to balance out the craziness of the modern world.
It's like they work a sense of calm to all the chaos.
Exactly. Think about the problems we face.
Yeah.
Climate change, political divides, social unrest.
Right.
These are big, complex issues.
They are.
They need careful thought, not just quick reactions.
And introverts, with their tendency to, pause and reflect.
Yes.
They might be better equipped to help us navigate those challenges.
They can help us slow down, listen to each other, find common ground.
Right. And create solutions that work for everyone, not just the loudest voices.
It's a good reminder that we need all kinds of minds to build a better world.
And it's not just about problem solving, right?
Yeah.
Introverts also enrich our culture and our understanding of, ourselves.
Of course. Think about all the great artists, writers, musicians.
Right. So many.
Thinkers who've given us such incredible works.
Yeah.
Their sensitivity, their ability to reflect, to explore those deep emotions. It's given us some of the most profound expressions of what it means to be human.
It's true. There's so much beauty and value in those quiet moments.
There is.
Those moments of solitude where we connect with ourselves.
And those moments are important for everyone, not just introverts.
Right.
In a world that's always demanding our attention.
It is. It's nonstop.
It's so easy to lose touch with ourselves.
It is.
But those quiet moments, those pauses, they let us recharge, reconnect with our values, find that inner peace.
They let us listen more deeply, observe more carefully,
Right.
appreciate the world around us.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into quiet, I think the message is clear. Embrace your introversion.
It's a great message.
If you're an introvert, don't try to fit into that extroverted mold.
Right, be yourself.
Honor your need for solitude, for reflection, for deeper connection.
And use those strengths to make a difference.
And if you're not an introvert, take the time to understand the introverts in your life.
Yeah, recognize their gifts.
Create spaces where they can thrive.
And listen to them.
Because they often have the most important things to say.
Kane's quiet is a powerful reminder that we need all kinds of people to make the world a better place.
We do.
It's about embracing our differences, celebrating our strengths, and creating a society where everyone feels valued.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into quiet.
It's been a great conversation.
We hope it's giving you some new insights.
Yeah.
And inspired you to embrace your own unique voice.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep reflecting, and keep celebrating the beauty of human diversity.
All right, so